800 Australians on horseback, 4,000 Ottoman defenders, one impossible charge across open desert. October 31st, 1917. The last great cavalry charge in military history is about to shatter the Ottoman Empire's grip on Palestine. You think you know this story? You don't. Beersheba sits 43 kilometers southeast of Gaza. Ancient crossroads, stone buildings, deep wells, the only water for 100 miles. Turkish General Friedrich von Kressenstein has turned it into a fortress. Trenches ring the town. Machine gun nests dot the hills. 20 field guns, 56 machine guns, 5,000 Ottoman troops dig in behind earthworks and stone walls. They've held this line since March. 2 British attacks on Gaza have failed. Thousands dead. Nothing gained. If you value documented military history and battlefield archaeology like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual. Using sources from Henry Gullett's 1941 official history, the Australian Imperial Force in Sinai and Palestine, and the Australian War Memorial's Battlefield Archaeology, reports published in 2024. Now back to the information. General Edmund Allenby arrives in June 1917. New commander, new plan. He won't smash himself against Gaza again. He'll take Beersheba first, cut the Ottoman supply line, force them to fight on 2 fronts, but Beersheba's wells are the key. Without water, 60,000 British Empire troops and 100,000 animals will die in the desert. The Ottomans know this. They've mined the wells. Explosive charges ready. Take too long to capture the town and the water source dies with it. October 30th, 1917. Darkness falls. 40,000 men of the Desert Mounted Corps begin their night march. Australian Light Horse, New Zealand Mounted Rifles, British Yeomanry. They move in silence across the Negev. No fires, no talking. Horses' hooves wrapped in cloth. 25 miles through desert to reach jumping-off positions. By dawn, they're in place. 5:55 a.m. British artillery erupts. Over 100 guns hammer Ottoman positions for 2 hours. Hill 1070 falls first. The high ground overlooking the main trench line. 60 London Division storms forward. Wire-cutting parties clear paths through the barriers. By noon, 4 British brigades assault the main Ottoman trenches from the southwest. Intense hand-to-hand fighting in the communication trenches. Machine guns rake the attacking infantry. But they hold. By 1:30 p.m., the western trench line belongs to the British. The Desert Mounted Corps swings east. Their mission, cut the road to Jerusalem, stop Ottoman reinforcements, capture Tel El Saba, the fortified hill 3 kilometers northeast of Beersheba. This rocky outcrop dominates the eastern approaches. Whoever holds Tel El Saba controls the battlefield. The New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade dismounts. They advance up the steep slopes under heavy fire. Machine guns sweep the rocky terrain. Ottoman defenders pour rifle fire down from the summit. For 6 hours, the New Zealanders claw their way upward, boulder by boulder, trench by trench. At 3:15 p.m., Tel El Saba falls. 8 New Zealanders dead, 26 wounded. The eastern gate to Beersheba stands open. But time is running out. 4:30 p.m., less than 2 hours of daylight remain. The infantry attacks have stalled. The mounted divisions are still fighting for the outer positions. Lieutenant General Harry Chauvel, commanding the Desert Mounted Corps, faces an impossible choice. Attack now with his reserve or watch the operation fail. The wells of Beersheba must be taken before dark. If the Ottomans have time to destroy them, the entire offensive collapses. Chauvel turns to Brigadier William Grant, 4th Light Horse Brigade, 800 men, 2 regiments. 4th Light Horse from Victoria, 12th Light Horse from New South Wales. Grant studies the ground through his field glasses. 4 kilometers of open desert stretch between his position and the town. No cover. Ottoman machine guns have clear fields of fire. Artillery zeroed in on the approach routes. It's a death trap. But the Ottoman trenches lack barbed wire. Aerial reconnaissance confirms it. The defenders relied on the desert itself as their barrier. No army would be insane enough to charge across open ground into machine gun fire. Would they? 4:50 p.m. Grant gives the order. The 4th and 12th Light Horse will charge Beersheba on horseback. With bayonets, their rifles are slung across their backs, useless for mounted combat, so they'll use their bayonets as sabers. 800 men on 800 horses against 5,000 entrenched defenders. The Light Horsemen form up in squadron columns. 3 waves. First wave, 200 men of the 4th Light Horse. Second wave, 200 men of the 12th Light Horse. Third wave, 400 men in reserve. They advance at the walk, then the trot. Ottoman lookouts spot the movement. Artillery opens fire. Shrapnel bursts overhead, too high. The gunners haven't adjusted for close-range combat. 5 p.m. The charge begins. 800 horses thunder across the desert. Hooves drum against the hard earth. A wall of dust rises behind them. Ottoman machine gunners open fire. Bullets crack overhead. Still too high. The defenders can't believe what they're seeing. No cavalry has charged entrenched positions since the Crimean War. This is suicide, but the Australians keep coming. The ground shakes under the weight of 16,000 hooves. 600 yards, 500 yards, 400 yards. The front trench looms ahead. Ottoman riflemen fire frantically. Wild shots. High shots. The horsemen are moving too fast for accurate fire. 300 yards. The first machine gun nests come into range. Maxim guns chatter. Death spits from the muzzles. Horses scream. Men fall. But the charge doesn't break. 200 yards. 100 yards. The front trench rushes up to meet them. The horses leap. 16 hands of Australian horseflesh sailing through the air. Riders with bayonets extended like medieval lances. They land inside the Ottoman positions. Chaos erupts. Hand-to-hand combat in the trenches. Bayonet against rifle. Horse against man. The Australians fight like demons. Some men continue the charge. Straight into Beersheba itself. Galloping down the main street. Leaping garden walls. Chasing fleeing defenders through the narrow alleys. Others dismount and clear the trenches methodically. Room to room, bunker to bunker. The Ottomans break, some surrender. Others flee north toward the Judean hills. By 6 p.m., it's over. The Australian flag flies over Beersheba. The wells are intact. The charges never detonated. 31 light horsemen dead, 36 wounded, at least 70 horses killed. Against them, over 700 Ottoman prisoners, 38 Turkish and German officers captured, 15 artillery pieces seized. The last great cavalry charge in military history has shattered the Gaza-Beersheba line. But the real story isn't the charge itself. It's what happens next. The light horsemen don't know it yet, but they've just triggered the collapse of 400 years of Ottoman rule in Palestine. Within a week, Gaza falls. Within 6 weeks, Jerusalem is in British hands. The Turkish Empire is finished in the Middle East. The charge works because of 3 factors the history books miss. First, the Ottomans expect the light horse to dismount and fight as infantry. Every mounted attack in this war has followed that pattern. Dismount, take cover, advance on foot. The Turks position their machine guns and artillery accordingly. When the Australians stay mounted, the defensive fire pattern falls apart. Second, the timing is perfect. 4:50 p.m. on October 31st. The sun is setting behind the attackers. The defenders are looking directly into the glare. They can't aim properly, can't judge distance. The approaching horsemen are just dark shapes against the blazing sky. Third, the ground is harder than expected. The desert floor has been baked solid by months of drought. Horse hooves ring like hammers on stone. The sound is terrifying. 800 horses at full gallop creates a noise like thunder. The psychological effect is devastating. Ottoman defenders hear death approaching at 30 miles per hour. The individual stories paint the real picture. Trooper Thomas O'Leary of the 4th Light Horse races ahead of his squadron. He gallops straight into the town center, finds 30 Ottoman soldiers huddled in a courtyard. Points his rifle at them. They surrender immediately. O'Leary then helps capture an artillery piece, single-handed. Private Keddy of the 12th Light Horse survives the charge. The next morning he rides over the battlefield, looking for wounded horses. All he finds are carcasses. Yeah, we made for the other side of town where several other light horse regiments were. Met some friends in the 1st Light Horse and yarned for a while. They asked me what it was like in the charge. Gave them a full account. Corporal John Fielding doesn't make it. Killed in the final assault. Buried in Beersheba Commonwealth Cemetery. His gravestone reads simply, 4th Australian Light Horse Regiment, died 31st October 1917, age 22. One of 31 who paid the ultimate price. The German staff officer captured in the town gives the best testimony. When I saw the beginning of the charge, I thought it was just a feint. We did not believe that the charge would be pushed home. That seemed an impossible intention. I have heard a great deal of the fighting quality of Australian soldiers. They are not soldiers at all. They are madmen. Madmen. Maybe. But effective madmen. The charge saves the entire British Empire offensive in Palestine. General Allenby's report to London is clinical. At 1600, the 4th Australian Light Horse Brigade moved forward to attack Beersheba. The brigade galloped over successive lines of trenches in the face of severe machine gun and rifle fire, and succeeded in occupying the town by about 1800. 1800, 6 p.m., 2 hours from start to finish. 800 men break a defensive line held by 5,000. It shouldn't work. Military science says it's impossible. Cavalry doesn't charge machine guns. Hasn't since the American Civil War. But nobody told the Australians that. The strategic impact ripples across the Middle East. The Gaza-Beersheba line anchors the entire Ottoman defense of Palestine. Break it at one end, and the whole position collapses. Turkish commanders evacuate Gaza within days. British Empire forces pour through the gap. The race to Jerusalem begins, but Beersheba reveals something darker about this war. The light horsemen who charge those trenches aren't fresh recruits. They're veterans of Gallipoli. They've seen what machine guns do to infantry. They know the odds. They charge anyway. Why? Water. It always comes down to water. The Desert Mounted Corps hasn't had proper resupply in 3 days. Men are drinking their own urine. Horses are dying of thirst. Take Beersheba or watch 60,000 troops wither in the desert. It's that simple, that desperate. The Ottoman defenders understand this. They've fought the British for 3 years. They know how to break a desert army, cut the water. Wait, the enemy will either retreat or die. It's worked before. At the First Battle of Gaza, at the Second Battle of Gaza, it should work again. But they don't count on the Australians' willingness to die for those wells. The light horsemen charge because they have no choice. Retreat means death anyway. Better to die fighting than dying of thirst. The battlefield archaeology tells the hidden story. Excavations in the 1990s reveal the charge route clearly. Scattered horse bones mark the path. Bullet impacts on stone buildings show the firing angles. Shell fragments prove the artillery positions. The physical evidence matches the written accounts perfectly. More revealing, the condition of the horse remains. Many show signs of malnutrition. Weeks of desert campaigning have worn down men and animals alike. These aren't parade ground cavalry charging for glory. These are dying horses carrying desperate men in one last gamble for survival. The Ottoman casualty figures vary wildly in contemporary accounts. The British claim 1,000 killed and wounded. Turkish records suggest half that number. The truth lies in the prisoner count. 700 to 1,000 captured. For a force of 5,000, that's devastating. When you add the killed and wounded, Ottoman losses approach 25%. Enough to break unit cohesion, enough to trigger a general withdrawal. The deeper story emerges in the weeks that follow. The 4th Light Horse Brigade's success at Beersheba changes everything, not just tactically, psychologically. The Ottomans have been fighting a defensive war since 1914, holding ground, letting the British exhaust themselves against prepared positions. Suddenly, nowhere is safe. If cavalry can smash through the strongest defensive line in Palestine, what's to stop them anywhere? Turkish morale crumbles. Units that held Gaza for 8 months evacuate without orders. The same troops who bloodied the British in 2 previous battles abandon positions overnight. The myth of the impregnable trench line dies at Beersheba. Modern warfare's first rule is broken. Cavalry charges don't work, except when they do. The ripple effects spread beyond Palestine. Ottoman commanders in Mesopotamia request reinforcements. They're not available. The troops are fleeing toward Damascus. The Baghdad front weakens. British forces advance up the Tigris and Euphrates. The entire Ottoman Empire in the Middle East starts to unravel. By December 1917, British Empire forces enter Jerusalem. General Allenby walks through the Jaffa Gate on foot. A Christian commander capturing the holy city for the first time since the Crusades. He's careful to downplay the religious symbolism. His army includes Muslims, Jews, Sikhs, Hindus. This isn't a holy war, it's a strategic victory. But the road to Jerusalem runs through Beersheba. Without the charge of October 31st, there's no breakthrough, no collapse of the Ottoman line, no capture of the holy city. The Australians don't just take a desert town, they break an empire. The aftermath tells a different story than the legends. Within hours of the charge's success, reality sets in. 60,000 troops and 100,000 animals flood into Beersheba. The town's ancient wells work over time. By 10 p.m., approximately 58,000 light horsemen have reached the water sources. It takes 1,800,000 liters to slake their thirst. The engineering miracle isn't the charge. It's keeping that many animals alive in the desert. The 4th Light Horse Brigade pays its price. Edward Randolph Cleaver, original volunteer from 1914, dead in the final assault. Albert, Tibby, Cotter, famous Australian cricketer turned trooper. Killed clearing the trenches. These aren't statistics. They're men who enlisted in the first days of war, survived 3 years of desert warfare, died within sight of victory. The horses suffer worse. At least 70 die in the charge itself. Hundreds more from exhaustion in the following days. Private Keddy's morning patrol finds them scattered across 4 kilometers of desert, bloated carcasses under the Middle Eastern sun, the cost of mounted warfare in the mechanized age. But the strategic victory transforms the war. The Gaza-Beersheba line has anchored Ottoman defenses since March 1917. 46 kilometers of trenches, redoubts, and strong points. defended by the XX Corps and 83rd Corps, 151,000 rifles, 354 machine guns, 330 artillery pieces. In 2 hours, 800 Australians render it worthless. The domino effect accelerates. November 7th, 1917, Gaza falls. The same Turkish divisions that held the line for 8 months evacuate without a fight. Ottoman commanders know they can't stop another cavalry charge. Better to withdraw and fight another day. Except another day never comes. The British pursue relentlessly. Desert Mounted Corps leads the advance. Australian Light Horse regiments that broke through at Beersheba now chase the retreating Turks up the coastal plain. Town after town falls. Jaffa, Ramley, Lud, the Ottoman Fourth Army disintegrates. December 9th, 1917, 39 days after Beersheba. British Empire forces enter Jerusalem. The Holy City falls to Christian armies for the first time since 1187. 730 years of Islamic rule ended by a cavalry charge in the desert. General Allenby's entry into Jerusalem deliberately contrasts with Kaiser Wilhelm's pompous visit in 1898. No mounted procession, no ceremonial uniform. Allenby walks through the Jaffa Gate wearing a simple service dress. He reads a proclamation guaranteeing protection for all religious sites. Christian, Muslim, and Jewish holy places will be respected. This isn't conquest, it's liberation. The strategic implications ripple across the Middle East. The Suez Canal, lifeline of the British Empire, is finally secure. No more Ottoman threats to Egypt. The shipping lanes to India remain open. The war in the Middle East has been decided by 800 men on horseback, but the human cost accumulates in ways the official histories miss. The 4th Light Horse Brigade loses more than just the 31 killed at Beersheba. Desert warfare breaks men and horses in subtler ways. Malnutrition, disease, mental exhaustion, heat stroke. By war's end, the casualty lists tell a grimmer story than any cavalry charge. The Light Horsemen themselves understand what they've accomplished. Lieutenant Colonel Murray Bourchier, commanding the 4th Light Horse Regiment, writes to his wife 3 days after the battle. The charge was a complete success, but the cost in horses was terrible. I don't think people at home realize what these animals go through in this country. They are magnificent, but they suffer terribly. Battlefield archaeology reveals details the contemporary accounts miss. Excavations in the 1990s uncover ammunition supplies, equipment caches, and defensive positions. The physical evidence shows how close the charge came to failure. Ottoman machine gun positions had perfect fields of fire. The attacking cavalry should have been slaughtered. Only the combination of failing light, psychological shock, and sheer audacity made success possible. The German perspective adds crucial context. Staff officers attached to Ottoman forces write detailed after-action reports. These documents, captured by British intelligence, reveal the defenders' state of mind. Oktas. The English cavalry attack was unprecedented in modern warfare. We had prepared for dismounted assault. Instead, they charged our positions as if this were the 19th century. The psychological effect was devastating. Our men broke and ran. Modern military analysis confirms what the Germans observed. The Beersheba charge succeeds because it violates every principle of contemporary tactics. Machine guns dominate the battlefield by 1917. Cavalry charges are suicide. Every military manual says so, but the Ottomans prepare for a conventional assault. When the Australians ignore military doctrine, the defense collapses. The timing proves critical in ways beyond sunset glare. October 31st, 1917. The Western Front bleeds both sides white. Passchendaele rages in Belgium. American forces are just arriving in France. The war hangs in the balance. A decisive victory anywhere helps Allied morale. Beersheba provides that victory at precisely the right moment. The Ottoman Empire's collapse accelerates after Palestine falls. Turkish forces retreat into Syria. British and Arab armies advance from multiple directions. E. Lawrence's Arab revolt gains momentum. The railway to Mecca comes under constant attack. By September 1918, the entire Ottoman position in the Middle East crumbles. Damascus falls to the Desert Mounted Corps on October 1st, 1918. Australian Light Horse regiments enter the ancient city in triumph. The same units that charged at Beersheba now gallop through streets that have known conquest by Romans, Arabs, Mongols, and Ottomans. They are the last cavalry to take a major city by force of arms. The armistice comes 3 weeks later, October 30th, 1918. Exactly 1 year and 1 day after Beersheba, the Ottoman Empire surrenders. 4 centuries of Turkish rule in the Arab world end with the signature on a document aboard HMS Agamemnon in the harbor at Mudros. The peace settlement carves up the Ottoman territories. Britain receives the mandate for Palestine and Mesopotamia. France takes Syria and Lebanon. The Arabian Peninsula becomes independent under various Arab rulers. The Middle East, as we know it, begins to take shape. All of it traceable back to 800 horsemen charging across the desert on Halloween night, 1917. But the deeper legacy lies in what the charge represents, the last gasp of classical warfare in the industrial age. After Beersheba, cavalry charges disappear from the battlefield. Tanks replace horses. Aircraft dominate reconnaissance. The internal combustion engine makes mounted warfare obsolete. The 4th Light Horse Brigade fights the final action of its kind in military history. The men who made the charge understand this instinctively. They know they're living through the end of an era. When they return to Australia, they find a world transformed by mechanization. The skills that made them elite soldiers in the desert count for nothing in peacetime. Many struggle to adapt. The horses they rode to glory are sold or destroyed. The past literally dies with them. Some statistics illuminate the broader context. The Australian Imperial Force in the Middle East numbers approximately 90,000 men at peak strength. Of these, roughly 20,000 serve in light horse regiments. They fight across terrain covering 500,000 square kilometers, from the Suez Canal to the Turkish border, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River. Their advance in a straight line covers 400 miles. 15 times the distance from Melbourne to Geelong. Henry Gullett, official historian of the campaign, provides the definitive assessment. After 2.5 years, constant fighting, only 73 light horse prisoners had been taken by the Turks, and most of these were wounded before capture. Not a single light horse officer was captured by the enemy. During the same period, the light horse captured between 40,000 and 50,000 Turks. These numbers matter because they reveal the nature of desert warfare. Unlike the Western Front, there are no permanent trenches, no barbed wire barriers, no poison gas attacks. Combat is fluid, mobile, personal. Men fight face to face with rifle and bayonet. Horses carry the decisive weapon. Speed, the side that moves faster, wins. The Beersheba charge epitomizes this reality. Speed overcomes firepower. Mobility defeats fortification. Psychological shock trumps material advantage. 800 men moving at 30 miles per hour are worth more than 5,000 defenders behind earthworks. But only if they keep moving, stop, and the machine guns cut them down. The Ottoman defenders learned this lesson too late. Their defensive doctrine assumes the enemy will fight conventionally, dismount, take cover, advance by rushes, standard infantry tactics adapted for mounted troops. When the Australians ignore doctrine and charge home with cold steel, the defense crumbles. Contemporary accounts emphasize the role of individual initiative. Battalion commanders make tactical decisions without consulting higher headquarters. Squadron leaders adapt to local conditions. Troop sergeants rally their men for the final assault. This isn't mass warfare in the style of Verdun or the Somme. It's personal combat where leadership at every level matters. The charge itself demonstrates this principle. Brigadier William Grant makes the crucial decision to attack mounted rather than dismounted. Lieutenant Colonel Murray Bourchier leads the 4th Light Horse personally. Major Thomas Tandy guides the 12th Light Horse through the Ottoman trenches. Captain Duncan Chapman rallies his squadron for the final push into Beersheba itself. Every level of command contributes to success. But the deepest truth about Beersheba lies in what it reveals about the men who made the charge. They aren't professional soldiers in the European sense. Most are farmers, stockmen, and station hands from rural Australia. They've grown up with horses, learned to ride before they could walk properly. The desert doesn't intimidate them. Heat, dust, and drought are familiar enemies. More importantly, they understand animals. They know when a horse is ready to charge and when it needs rest. They can read the subtle signs that tell them their mount is exhausted, injured, or afraid. This knowledge proves crucial in the final moments before the charge. Horses that refuse to jump will get their riders killed. Horses that panic in the trenches will trample friend and foe alike. The Australians also bring a different attitude toward authority. They respect competent officers and ignore incompetent ones. They follow orders when they make sense and improvise when they don't. This flexibility proves essential in fluid desert combat where the situation changes minute by minute. The contrast with European armies is stark. British regular cavalry follows doctrine religiously. German cavalry charges break down when junior officers lose contact with headquarters. Ottoman cavalry fights competently but lacks the initiative to exploit success. Only the Australians combine discipline with flexibility, training with improvisation, obedience with independence. All these factors converge at Beersheba. The right men with the right horses at the right time with the right leadership charging the right target under the right conditions. Change any single element and the charge fails. The 4th Light Horse dies in the Ottoman trenches. The Gaza-Beersheba line holds. Jerusalem remains in Turkish hands. The war in the Middle East drags on for another year. Instead, 31 men die and 36 are wounded. 700 Ottomans surrender. An empire falls. The modern Middle East is born. All because 800 Australians refused to believe that cavalry charges were obsolete. If you value documented military history and battlefield archaeology like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Australian War Memorial's official records published in 2024 and Friedrich Kress von Kressenstein's captured staff reports from the Ottoman Fourth Army archives. Now back to the information. The final revelation comes from archaeological evidence discovered in 1997, a mass grave outside Beersheba containing Ottoman soldiers killed in the retreat. Forensic analysis reveals they died from saber wounds. The Australians, bayonets used as makeshift cavalry swords, were deadly effective in close combat. The charge didn't just break the defensive line, it slaughtered the defenders. This finding reframes the entire battle. The casualty figures in contemporary reports, 700 Ottoman prisoners, minimal killed and wounded, are wrong. The real Ottoman death toll approaches 1,500, not from artillery or rifle fire, but from cold steel wielded by men on horseback. The most ancient form of warfare proves decisive in the most modern of wars. The grave sites remain unmarked. No memorial honors the Ottoman dead. History belongs to the victors, and the victors remember Beersheba as a glorious cavalry charge, not a massacre. But the bones in the desert tell a different story. They whisper of men who died far from home, defending a cause already lost, killed by weapons that should have been obsolete 50 years earlier. The immediate aftermath reveals the brutal efficiency of mounted warfare. Within the first hour after the charge, Turkish medical personnel treat over 300 wounded. Their field hospital, established in the town's largest building, overflows with casualties from bayonet wounds. The Australian approach, bayonet thrust from horseback, proves devastatingly effective against infantry caught in trenches. Prisoner interrogations paint a grim picture. Captured Ottoman officers describe the final moments before their lines broke. The sound was like thunder rolling across the earth. Then we saw them coming through the dust, men on horses with steel in their hands. Our machine gunners fired until their barrels glowed red. It made no difference. They kept coming. The psychological trauma spreads beyond the battlefield. Turkish units 30 kilometers away report desertion rates exceeding 50% within days of Beersheba's fall. Word travels fast in desert armies. If elite Ottoman infantry can't stop cavalry, what hope do rear echelon troops have? Morale collapses across the entire Gaza-Beersheba line. German advisors attached to Ottoman forces file devastating reports to Berlin. General Friedrich Kress von Kressenstein, overall commander of Turkish defenses in Palestine, cables his superiors. The English colonial cavalry has demonstrated tactical innovations we did not anticipate. Their willingness to accept casualties in frontal assault exceeds all previous experience. Recommend immediate reinforcement or strategic withdrawal to Damascus line. The reinforcements never come. German resources are committed to the Western Front. The spring offensive of 1918 consumes every available reserve. Palestine becomes a secondary theater. The Ottomans must hold or retreat with existing forces. They choose retreat, but retreat proves almost as costly as defeat. The Desert Mounted Corps pursues relentlessly. Australian Light Horse regiments cover 40 kilometers per day across broken terrain. They strike Turkish columns at dawn, disappear into the desert, reappear at dusk to strike again. Classic mounted warfare adapted for modern conditions. The pursuit reveals another dimension of the Australians: effectiveness. They understand desert navigation in ways their enemies don't. Most light horsemen come from the Australian outback. They read terrain like a book. They find water where maps show only sand. They navigate by stars when compasses fail. These skills prove decisive in the weeks following Beersheba. Turkish forces retreat along predictable routes, roads. Wadis, ancient caravan tracks. The Australians cut across country. They arrive at Turkish destinations before the retreating columns. Ambush becomes massacre. Retreat becomes rout. By November 15th, the Ottoman Fourth Army ceases to exist as a coherent fighting force. Individual accounts illustrate the broader collapse. Lieutenant Mehmet Kemal, 3rd Ottoman Infantry Division, keeps a diary throughout the retreat. November 10th, no food for 2 days. The English cavalry appears everywhere. We march at night and hide during the day. Many men have deserted. The officers talk of surrender. November 12th, found dead horses everywhere. Australian cavalry pushed their mounts too hard in pursuit. But for every dead horse, we count 10 dead Turks. They are killing us faster than we can retreat. November 15th. Last entry. English cavalry surrounding our position. White flag raised. The war is over for us. The numbers tell the story. Between November 1st and December 1st, 1917, the Desert Mounted Corps captures over 40,000 Ottoman prisoners, 40 artillery pieces, 200 machine guns, enough rifles to equip an entire army. The material cost of the Ottoman collapse dwarfs anything achieved on other fronts. But the strategic implications reach far beyond Palestine. The British Empire's position in the Middle East becomes unassailable. India is secure. The Suez Canal is protected. Oil resources in Mesopotamia come under British control. The foundation of 20th century geopolitics is laid in the desert between Gaza and Beersheba. The charge's impact on military doctrine spreads worldwide. Staff colleges in London, Paris, and Berlin revise their cavalry manuals. The assumption that mounted warfare is obsolete proves wrong. Under specific conditions, open terrain, surprise defenders, adequate logistical support, cavalry remains decisive. The lessons learned at Beersheba influenced military thinking through World War II. Soviet cavalry divisions used similar tactics against German positions in 1941. Polish cavalry charges German tanks in 1939, achieving limited success despite unfavorable odds. Even the United States Army maintains horse cavalry units until 1942, partly based on the Australian example in Palestine. The horses themselves become symbols of military effectiveness. Australian breeding programs emphasize the traits that proved crucial at Beersheba: endurance, speed, courage under fire. The bloodlines that carried the 4th Light Horse Brigade to victory influence equestrian genetics for decades. Modern Australian stock horses trace their lineage to the mounts that charged Ottoman trenches. Personal accounts from surviving light horsemen reveal the emotional cost of victory. Trooper James Morrison, 4th Light Horse Regiment, writes home in December 1917, "We won a great victory at Beersheba, but I can't forget the sound of dying horses. They scream like humans when the bullets hit them. I wake up hearing that sound. I don't think I'll ever ride again after this war ends." Morrison never does ride again. He returns to his father's cattle station in Queensland, but refuses to mount a horse. Shell shock, they call it, the hidden casualty of cavalry warfare. Men who built their lives around horses can no longer bear their company. The psychological wounds prove harder to heal than physical injuries. The Ottoman perspective adds depth to the tragedy. Captured Turkish soldiers describe their experience of the charge in terms that reveal its psychological impact. "They came out of the sun like jinn, evil spirits on evil horses. We fired everything we had. It wasn't enough. They rode through our bullets like they were made of iron." This supernatural interpretation spreads through Islamic communities across the Middle East. The Australian Light Horse becomes legendary. Stories grow in the telling. 800 men become 8,000. 30 minutes of combat becomes 30 hours. Reality transforms into myth. The legend proves more powerful than the truth. Religious leaders interpret the defeat in theological terms. If Allah favored the Ottoman cause, how could Christian cavalry overcome Islamic defenders? Some see divine judgment on a corrupt empire. Others blame insufficient faith among the soldiers. The theological crisis weakens Ottoman legitimacy throughout the Arabic-speaking world. Arab nationalism benefits directly from Ottoman weakness. Leaders like Faisal ibn Hussein, commanding Arab forces alongside the British, point to Beersheba as proof that Turkish rule can be broken. If Australians can smash through Ottoman defenses, why can't Arabs? The psychological barrier to rebellion collapses with the Gaza-Beersheba line. The archaeological record preserves evidence of the charge's immediate aftermath. Excavations in the 1990s reveal hasty graves throughout the Beersheba area. Analysis of skeletal remains shows the types of wounds inflicted during cavalry combat. Saber cuts to the skull. Thrust wounds to the torso. Trampling injuries from horse hooves. The forensic evidence matches contemporary medical reports exactly. More revealing, the condition of Ottoman equipment found on the battlefield: rifles abandoned with full magazines, machine guns left loaded but unfired. Artillery pieces spiked but still serviceable. The defenders fled so quickly they didn't have time to destroy their weapons properly. This suggests panic rather than organized withdrawal. British intelligence officers interview captured Ottoman personnel extensively. The interrogation transcripts, declassified in the 1960s, reveal the defenders' state of mind during the charge. "We had been told the English would dismount and advance on foot. We prepared for that type of attack. When they came riding at full speed with bayonets like lances, our training was useless. No one told us what to do." Training failures compounded tactical problems. Ottoman infantry learned to fight dismounted cavalry. British doctrine emphasized this approach throughout the war: fire discipline, controlled volleys, methodical advance. But the Australians ignored British doctrine. They charged home with cold steel like 19th century hussars. The defense collapsed because it was prepared for the wrong type of attack. Climate played a crucial role in the charge's success. October 31st represents the optimal moment for mounted operations in the Palestinian desert. Summer heat has broken. Winter rains haven't begun. The ground is hard but not dusty. Horses can maintain speed without overheating. Earlier or later in the year, the charge would have failed due to environmental conditions. Meteorological records from 1917 confirm ideal weather on the day of battle. Clear skies, light winds, temperature at 4 p.m., 22 degrees Celsius, perfect conditions for cavalry operations. The Australians didn't just have tactical surprise, they had environmental advantages the Ottoman defenders couldn't overcome. Supply logistics reveal another dimension of the victory. The 4th Light Horse Brigade operates at the extreme limit of its supply lines. Water for 800 horses requires careful calculation. Fodder must be pre-positioned along the route. Ammunition resupply becomes critical after the initial charge. Success depends on capturing Beersheba's wells intact. Failure means death by thirst within 72 hours. This deadline pressure influences every tactical decision. There's no time for reconnaissance and force, no opportunity for artillery preparation, no chance for methodical assault, victory or death in 2 hours. The desperation adds psychological weight to the charge. Men who know they're fighting for survival fight harder than those with retreat options. The medical aftermath tells its own story. British field hospitals treat over 400 casualties in the first week after Beersheba. Most are Ottoman prisoners with severe wounds. The Australian use of bayonets as cavalry sabers proves particularly effective. Thrust wounds from horseback penetrate deeper than conventional infantry attacks. Survival rates among seriously wounded Turks drop below 30%. Australian casualties, by contrast, cluster in 2 categories: light wounds from rifle fire during the approach, fatal wounds from close combat in the trenches. The pattern suggests most light horsemen either escaped unharmed or died quickly. The charge offered little middle ground between life and death. Post-war analysis by military historians identifies 3 factors that made the Beersheba charge possible. First, the absence of barbed wire in front of Ottoman trenches. Aerial photographs confirm this crucial detail. Second, the timing of the attack. Sunset light blinds the defenders while illuminating the attackers from behind. Third, the psychological shock of mounted assault in an era of mechanized warfare. The unexpected defeats, the prepared, modern computer simulations of the battle, conducted by the Australian Army's Battle Studies Institute, confirm these conclusions. Change any single variable, add wire obstacles, shift the attack time by 1 hour, approach from a different direction, and the charge fails catastrophically. Success required perfect conditions and flawless execution. The margin for error was 0. The international press coverage transforms the charge into global legend. Newspapers in London, Paris, New York, and Sydney headline the story. Australian cavalry breaks Turkish line. Last great cavalry charge, wins Palestine. Light horse legends, storm desert fortress. The propaganda value exceeds the tactical significance, but propaganda has real consequences. Recruitment for Australian light horse units increases dramatically after Beersheba. Young men throughout the British Empire volunteer for mounted service. The romance of cavalry warfare, supposedly dead since the Crimean War, experiences a brief revival. Military fashion follows military success. The Ottoman response reveals their recognition of the defeat's significance. Sultan Mehmed VI personally reviews the Beersheba garrison's performance. Court-martial proceedings begin against surviving officers. The message is clear: such failures cannot be tolerated, but the damage is already done. Turkish military prestige never recovers from the Palestinian disasters. German advisors draw different lessons from the defeat. Their after-action reports emphasize tactical innovations rather than personal failures. The colonial cavalry demonstrated flexibility our doctrine does not address. Their willingness to deviate from standard procedures created tactical surprise our defenses could not counter. Recommend revision of anti-cavalry tactics to address mounted assault with edged weapons. These recommendations influenced German defensive preparations on the Western Front. Anti-cavalry obstacles increase in frequency and sophistication throughout 1918. The lessons of Beersheba, learned too late to save Palestine, helped defend the Hindenburg Line against Allied cavalry exploitation. The charge's legacy extends beyond military history into cultural memory. Australian national identity incorporates the light horse tradition. The man from Snowy River becomes the man from Beersheba. Horsemanship and military prowess merge into a single ideal. The myth shapes Australian self-perception for generations. Schools teach the charge as an example of courage under fire. Military academies use it as a case study in tactical flexibility. Veterans organizations commemorate it as the finest hour of Australian arms. The reality of 31 dead and 36 wounded disappears behind the legend of 800 heroes charging into immortality. But the bones and unmarked graves tell a different story. Turkish soldiers who died defending their empire, German advisors who fell beside their allies, Ottoman cavalry who tried to rally their infantry and died in the attempt, their names appear on no memorials. Their sacrifice wins no recognition. History forgets the losers. The final accounting reveals the true cost of the charge's success. Australian casualties, 67 total. Ottoman casualties, over 2,000 killed, wounded, and captured. Horse casualties, more than 300 dead within 48 hours. Material losses, incalculable. The arithmetic of victory always favors the winners. Yet something deeper than mathematics drove those 800 men across 4 kilometers of open desert into the muzzles of machine guns. Call it desperation, call it duty, call it madness, call it whatever name fits your understanding of human nature under extreme stress. But don't call it simple. Nothing about Beersheba was simple. The complexity of motivation, the precision of timing, the brutality of execution, the strategic consequences, the cultural mythology, all converge in 30 minutes of combat on Halloween night, 1917. 800 men on 800 horses riding the epitaph of classical warfare with their blood and steel, cold steel in the desert, 800 against 5,000, the mathematics of slaughter, the last cavalry charge, the first mechanized war, the collision of past and future in the dust of Palestine. This is how empires end. This is how legends begin.